Hi, this is Odi, and today I'm going to be reviewing Bandai's Soul of Chogokin GX64 Space Battleship Yamato 2199. The box is very different from other Soul of Chogokins that I've bought so far. It's very subdued, and the colours look even more subdued than the source material or the ship itself, so something new for me. It's also a very long box. I wouldn't call it a big box. Definitely other boxes have felt bigger, but it is pretty long. Moving it around like this, you can see different views of it. So here's the front of the ship on that box, but it's very mute. It's hard to even pick up there. On the back, some of the features. Let's get the box open and have a look at what's inside. All this white styrofoam makes it a bit hard to pick up, so I've got my spotlight here. You can see the Yamato is secured inside a styrofoam tray with the cannons from the top unattached. This little bit here was floating loose as well, which is the cover of the front point. I'm going to pop this out so we can have a clearer look. I've come to realize that I should have done this first, so please, anyone opening the box, take out the base first, because once you get the Yamato in your hand, there is no way you can put it down. It's a risky business. Bit's going to snap off. So anyway, here's the base. It came pre-applied with this Yamato 2199 plaque. I had thought that this was going to be a stick-on piece, just like with the DX Amazing Z. It feels like plastic and it feels molded on. Maybe wrong. Either way, it's not metal, even if it is a detachable piece. The reason I thought it would be detached is because I think the American version of this is going to say Argo or something like that. So anyway, the Bandai one is pre-attached. You can see these sections here, which are for holding the spaceship up, can be positioned in different spots. So if you disconnect it, you can actually tilt it. So if you choose to tilt the ship, you can have a whole range of motion here. And this is the wide connector that grasps the whole girth of the hull, so tilting it won't tip it off. But we get a second set. This is the bottom section of the other bracket, and you can see it attaches differently. It just plugs on. And comparing the two, you can see that this is the same section of the ship that it grasps. One is much shallower and looks less obtrusive, while the other one is more secure for holding your Yamato safely. So it's really personal preference which way you go. I'm going with the nice, big, safe version, I think. There's also this remote control, an infrared remote control unit, almost exactly the same as the one that came with the DX Amazing Z. From the back, it looks exactly the same. You've got to push a pin in here and slide the cover off, except the buttons are different. I actually just went and swapped my AAA batteries into this from the Amazinger to do the review. The next thing you'll want to do before putting it on the stand is flip this guy upside down into this position. Grab your fingernail under this ribbed section here. Just pop it off. Be very careful because all these pointy bits here they feel so breakable, and these, oh my god, these turrets feel so breakable. You'll see a little exposed screw. Then grab yourself a Phillips head screwdriver, preferably one that's not so rusted and horrible as this one. Unscrew the screw. That doesn't feel so good. Oh, it's already out. And that just pops off. We need to whack a few AAA batteries in there. Here she is without her cannons. It's quite a long piece. We'll get to that in a minute though. Cannons come as these separate little bits, turrets, or I don't know what you want to call these. Main guns maybe. They just peg on like that. It's kind of a friction thing. There's a hexagonal hole. They feel like they've got some die cast in them. They're quite weighty, although the barrels themselves are not metal and they can pivot up and down like this. It feels like the body, the upper body of the turrets are made of die cast, so that's pretty cool. I'm not sure, even on this smaller one I can feel a little bit of weight to it. Let's put that one on, careful not to break anything. speaking about breaking anything, the undersection that covers the battery, I dropped it from quite a height, maybe about 40 or 50 centimeters in between takes of this video, and it didn't break. So it is a little bit more durable than I gave it credit for. That's the Yamato. I'm going to give you a slow turnaround now. It's really pretty nice looking, very matte. I've seen pictures of the previous Yamato, and it had kind of paint detailing between the panel lines to give it an exaggerated weathering. There's no such paint detailing on this, and I like it better having the uniform look. That weathering always seemed too exaggerated for my tastes, and I mean, if you like weathering, there's nothing stopping anyone from adding their own, but I think at this scale to show those lines between the panels was just too much. That only suits a much bigger scale toy. There's the engine in there. Not the engine, the rocket, or whatever you want to call it. It's not really showing up, but there's a light in there. We'll get to that later on as well. I haven't put the wings on yet. So I don't like the wings on the Yamato, and you can see where they go is covered by this little panel here. So if you choose not to have them on, it doesn't make the whole thing look bad. That's really nice. I also haven't attached the anchors, so let's go and get them. Here's Yamato with the anchor in the retracted position. If I very carefully grab it and pull it off, and it is quite fragile, quite tiny, I can replace it with this fully extended anchor. My fingers are so big compared to this, it's a little bit hard to manipulate, but you can see that's a real metal chain, and at the end of the chain is the open position anchor. So I know it's a bit absurd to have an anchor like this in space, but you know, it's part of the charm of the series, the old series, that things like that were reasonable in that, and you know, it's pretty cool. I never intend, I think, to pose it or position it on my shelf with this anchor in, but I like the fact that it's there. The wing mechanism is not retractable, but rather replaceable with these pieces, and you can see they've got a little anchor on them there to hold them in. This panel here, if you look at it, is spring-loaded, which is how it remains flush. If you angle it in from the back, push the front in, and then slide it forward, it will lock into place. It's kind of better than I thought. I guess it adds a bit of spaciness to the ship. Otherwise, somebody might be confused that this is actually just an ordinary ship. I mean, an ordinary ship definitely wouldn't have a wing, but then again, neither really would a spaceship, would it? This little section here is an infrared sensor that detects signals from the remote control. On the opposite side, there's another one that looks exactly the same, but it controls turret position. So all of the turrets are linked, and as you rotate it, they simultaneously move. Now, they don't have up and down. You have to position that individually by hand, and that's about as far sideways as what they can point. It seems to be able to go the other way much further. That's a little bit weird. If you remember, there was a similar feature on the Transformers Omega Supreme figure. I always liked that, and I like this too. Looking more closely, you can see that there's a whole battery of the smaller guns there. They are extremely thin, and although they do flex, I don't know if you can see them flexing there, they flex, I can just imagine that too much force on them will put a bend that will permanently crease. Flipping this right around to the other side, it actually came with one that was already permanently creased. So you can see this gun here points off in the other direction. Now, I haven't tried to fix it yet because I wanted to show it on camera, but I'm wondering if I can actually fix that with a little bit of force without it snapping. Not too bad. Wouldn't want to do it too many times. That's partially caused because this figure doesn't just ship in the polystyrene as I showed it. It also has plastic sleeves around it, I think to stop maybe chemical reactions between the polystyrene and the plastic parts of this. And that plastic sleeve is what had bent, that's what had bent this part up here. We get 6 little fighters like this, painted in different color schemes, and they're really minuscule. If you look at that, that's about 1.5 centimeters long. It's very tiny. It pegs onto the top of this plastic section on a wire, and just the act of pegging that in bends it. It's so flimsy that it's a bit scary to snap in half, so I wouldn't do it more than I had to. Going to the other end, you can see it sits on a little base. So I guess the idea is that you stick these wires all around your display to show where the fighters are and what they're doing. But in reality, it just kind of looks ugly doing that. I'd be much happier to either have them sitting on the ship somewhere, or I don't know, just not on display, because too much wire and not enough ship, They've got the wire as thin as they could, but the ship is so small that in proportion it's huge. Now I'm going to turn her on and we'll see if we can hear the startup sound. That's a one-time thing when you flip the switch. After you flip the switch, on the back, you can see that 3 engines are permanently on. On camera that might look like they're pulsating, but to the naked eye it's steady, no pulsating. That's just how my camera is working. Now we've got a bunch of sound effects, most of which are music, with our handy little remote control here. So first off, I'll just go through the music, a little bit of each. So the first one, this button up here. The second one, sort of combat music. Third one, bad guys arriving, I think. Fourth, more traditional music. Next one. Uh-oh, something's happening. I think the 5th one is nothing. Yeah, nothing. So I believe if we push, I just tend to push these 3 at the same time and it turns off the music. If you turn on music, such as this one here, and hit this button, what we should get is cannons firing. So I guess this button is really like an action button. What happens when you press this is dependent on the sounds. So the music with this one plus this equals cannons, whereas if I have this music and this, it equals a kind of alarm. So I'm going to push this one and this. It sounds like an engine build-up, not really gunfire. This traditional music here with the action button is a more traditional kind of weapon fire, so let's try that. This button here with the action button is more laser fire for these guns here. You can imagine lots of little laser bursts going off all over the place. If on the other hand you don't want the weapon sounds going at the same time as the music, what you can do is start with the action key. So I'm going to hold this down and press this one. The next one. The next one. The next one. The next one. Finally, if we want to access the main gun, the wave motion cannon, all we're going to do is hold the action key down here. And if we hold it for long enough, it'll start building up power. It'll build up and build up and build up. And when you finally let go, that's when the burst will come out. If you hold it too long, it'll just turn to nothing. So here we go. Wait for it. Now, and then I push it again. Just let it go now. It's actually kind of a letdown, isn't it, that a huge wave of energy doesn't pour out the front of that. All that huge throbbing, pulsing, build-up sound to not finally get the wave coming out the front. It's a little bit disappointing, but it's pretty cool light effects. This front bit here also pops off to reveal some kind of radar. Doesn't really look like anything though. So let's just stick that back on. That's the bit that was floating around loose in the box too. On the underside, you can flip down this panel if you've got a fingernail. And that's where your little ships scoot off down the back. You can see that there's a peg in there. So any one of your other ships could be pegged onto that. Like this little silver guy here. So I've put that on from one of the stands that was supposed to be hovering around. Incidentally, if you don't want to use those stands, they can just peg onto the base along the bottom down here. I've gone ahead and pulled off the side wing here because next I want to show you the inside of the ship where the planes are queued up to get out. Now there's a fingernail catch here which maybe those of you with very thin, long fingernails might be able to get it open. There's no way in hell I can open that panel using my fingernail. So what I like to do is leave the little door open underneath and just gently get something like a screwdriver and poke it from the underside like that. And that will pop it open for you. And then you can just fold it like a door. If you leave the wing on, there will be a collision with this piece. And because it's die cast, I think that's die cast, it will scrape the paint off. So you definitely want to avoid that. Now let me get a bit of light in here. Gee, it's hard to light that up, isn't it? But you can see, can you see there's ships queued up on a big circle in there, ready to be dropped off out the bottom. Maybe a different angle. That's a bit better. So it's a cool mechanism. I mean, it's a bit hard for me to see in real life, to be honest. It's very tiny, and the detail on the ship is lost. If they had put some LEDs in there to light them up, it would have been much more effective as a display piece. But with the light flooding into it like this, it does look cool. Now I think it's time for some actual measurements of this guy. So here's my ancient old wooden ruler. From the tip of the nose to the end of the engine is about 41 centimeters. So what's that in inches? About 16 inches. So it's a 16-inch long rendition of the ship. I think you can get bigger models than this, but if you want a pre-built, pre-painted, nice quality piece, I think this is the biggest one available. And definitely there's bigger models. I've seen some pictures of bigger models. For some perspective on things you might already have, here's SH Monster Art's Burning Godzilla. So yeah, Godzilla looks pretty damn huge compared to this. If you've been thinking that the Yamato is a big ship, because everyone talks about how big it is not really that big. Definitely long. I mean, how many figures have you got? You can say 16 inches, but long doesn't mean big. It's a very narrow tube, and putting it with other stuff does make it look a little bit small. Here it is being ridden by Legends Optimus Prime from the latest generation's Legends. Now that Optimus has to ride everything, I guess he can ride the Yamato. So again, this is a pretty small figure, and it looks big in comparison to the Yamato. Maybe my expectations were just a bit blown out by all the hype, but it does to me feel a little bit smaller than what I had hoped. I guess I had better point out the metal content before I finish up here. So this is not metal. This section at the front is it's kind of plastic, I'm pretty sure. Yep, plastic. Here is, I believe, no, here, this panel is where the metal starts. So we've got die cast running underneath up to this point here. Die cast door, more die cast on this red section here. I think, yep, this is die cast at the back. Plastic, die cast on the top here. More plastic on the top. So die cast is basically from here to here in the red, a big chunk on the back, and then the tops of the guns. Not as heavy as what I had thought it would be, and given the shipping that some places are charging, I would have thought that it would be heavier than this, but I guess compared to some of my other solid Chogokins that are heavy, it probably feels about equivalent weight to some of those guys. I don't have a scale here to exactly measure it, but it feels maybe equivalent to perhaps God Mars, maybe even a little lighter. My final thoughts. There's nothing really wrong with this ship. It seems nice enough. I'm just not sure that I really needed to buy it. Part of the reason I bought it was that for a long time I've liked first Starblazers, and then now the Yamato 2199. I really enjoyed watching that. I thought it was a fantastic show, and it's pretty fresh in my mind. So whenever I see a show that's really cool, the freshness of that show is a real driving force for how much I want to get the stuff that goes with it. And I managed to stop myself from buying any of the, are they statues or are they dolls? I don't know what you call them, especially the girls from that show. I stopped myself from buying that, but I really wanted to have something tangible from the show to remember it by, and this seemed probably the best thing to get. It was quite expensive. I mean, you can get it from a lot of places, and the initial price plus the shipping vary greatly depending on where you get it from and where you are. So for me, I originally ordered it from BBTS, but two factors got me to cancel from BBTS. The first factor was I heard that it's going to be called the Argo. I don't want it to be called that. I want to have Yamato written at the front. So factor number one. But the real clincher for having to cancel from them was that the shipping was just through the roof. So when I went looking for sellers in Japan, the shipping from Japan to Australia is much cheaper, and I ended up buying it. But it still cost me like a fortune for what it is. With the shipping came to about $300, and you know what? I think I regret it a little bit. I don't think it was worth that price. I've since heard that this thing, the demand has been low, and that people are getting stuck with them and starting to sell them at a much cheaper rate. I just wish I had held off a little bit longer and maybe got it a bit cheaper. I didn't, and it's not a bad piece. It's very satisfactory, so I don't feel bad per se for spending that money, but I feel annoyed at myself for my lack of patience. I knew this thing wasn't going to disappear overnight, and I probably should have held off longer. And by the time any of you guys are watching this video, it's probably actually going to be a good time to buy it, and you'll get it for much cheaper than what I ended up paying for it. I think if in total I had paid $200 to $250, I would have been pretty happy with it. But paying right on $300 in Australian dollars after everything was said and done, it is overpriced and not really worth getting for that that price. There are also some other issues that make it less than perfect. And the first one is the new design is very narrow at the front. I was always a huge fan of the big end, the big gun at the end, the wave motion cannon. And if you look at this guy, I mean, perspective always makes it look bigger. So you'll see in a lot of photos this view, and it seems like the gun is huge. It is not huge at all, and there's no way for me to really show how not huge that is on camera. It's so long that perspective is just going to fool you every time. But take my word for it, this is a very tiny end, and I mean, I understood that going in, that the design was not the same, but still it is smaller than what I had thought. And the other thing also relates to the wave motion gun. Where is the torpedo that blocks it up? Both shows featured that. 2199 featured that, the original featured that, the screw that screws its way in here. How can you make the Yamato without having that? That's like, I don't know, I just feel ripped off not having that. And all I can say is maybe Bandai are going to do another ship that launches that missile, but without that I feel that the set is incomplete. I hope this video has helped somebody at least make a decision about whether they want to buy it or not. If I had seen a video before buying this, I probably would not have bought it. There were no videos at all. I looked and looked and looked. I think mine is the first, so I guess that's the price I pay for being early. I don't want it to come off too negative. It's a quality, good, heavy, nice looking piece. I just feel that I wish I didn't have to pay that much to get it. This has been my video review for Bandai's Soul of Chogokin GX64 Space Battleship Yamato 2199. I'm Odeon. Thank you very much for watching this video. You know, honestly, I want something 2 or 3 times bigger than this. I knew it wasn't ever going to be a Soul of Chogokin, but I get fun by touching things and playing with them, and the little bits on this are so thin you don't want to touch it. You just want to put it in a glass case and not even breathe on this thing. So I would be, 16 inches. Nah, I want like a 30 or 40 inch Yamato where the bays open up and the ships that come out, you can actually play with them. That would be awesome. And I would pay, $600, maybe $700. I would be willing to go if it was a huge playset like that and kept the quality, not cheaping out like a Hasbro junk piece, but really a quality thing. And maybe not solid Chogokin, but thick, durable plastic, heavy, not necessarily die cast. That's what I would love. And give me one of those of Macross too, and I'll be basically in heaven. Anyway, thanks for watching again. I'm Odeon. See you next time.